If you want more control, better flow, and the confidence to ride harder, your suspension is where it starts. Today, we're breaking down exactly why suspension matters, how it works, and how to dial it in for your style. Let's get into it. Why suspension matters. Suspension isn't just about comfort. It's your lifeline for control. A well-tuned suspension absorbs impacts from rocks, ruts, and jumps, keeping your tires glued to the ground. That means better traction, more precise handling, and shorter braking distances. Poor suspension, it's a recipe for instability and fatigue, especially at speed. Confidence starts with control. The more predictable your suspension, the more confident you ride. When your bike responds consistently, soaking up hits, tracking straight through corners, you trust it. And when you trust it, you push harder. Bad suspension, you second guess every move, you tense up, and you ride worse. Understanding the basics. Your suspension has two main parts. The forks up front, taking the hits from braking bumps, rocks, and jumps, and the shock in the rear, handling accelerations, landings, and rear wheel traction. Think of it like your legs. Your forks are your knees, absorbing the front hits, your shocks are your hips, balancing you on impact. Together, they keep the bike from bucking you off. That being said though, your legs are actually part of your suspension, so get your butt off the seat and use them. Key components explained. Let's break it down. Springs. Springs intake energy and put out energy. Dampers control how fast the springs move in and out. Compression and rebound. Without them, you'd be bouncing around like crazy. The dampers in our suspension are controlled by valves. Valves fine-tune oil flow to help handle sharp hits versus smooth compressions. These valves are personalized and are changed depending on how you ride. Seals. Seals keep dirt out and oil in. Worn seals are a big problem. Types of suspension systems. Right side up forks, light, simple, great for trail and dual sports. Usually pretty cheap too. Upside down forks, stiffer and more stable for aggressive riders and racing. Air forks are lightweight, ultra adjustable, but sensitive and tricky to dial in. This is something that's used more in motocross and supercross. Linkage shock. Progressive feel, great tuning, used on most performance bikes. PDS, or progressive dampening system. No linkage, more ground clearance, used on some KTMs. Now that we understand the different types of suspension, let's talk about setting up your suspension. First step is get your spring rate right. Too soft, you're gonna bottom out. Too stiff, the ride's gonna be really harsh. Match it to your weight with gear on. Then set your sag. This is personal preference, but I do suggest starting at what the owner's manual recommends and making changes later. Style does matter when it comes to sag. Enduro is a little bit softer, so you want more sag. MX is stiffer, so less sag, and SX is basically a rigid suspension because those guys are crazy. I can't stress enough how important it is to set your sag and get your spring rate right. Even if you do nothing else, when you buy a new bike or you buy a used bike, the likelihood is that you need to do this. Even a bike from the dealership, the sag is not set to you, and it's gonna be really uncommon that the sag will be set if you buy the bike used. Even if the person is the same weight as you, most people don't set sag, and it makes a huge difference. So I definitely recommend doing that. When do we make suspension changes? Well, I'm talking about clickers here. Anytime the bike feels unpredictable or uncomfortable, if you're getting unexpected front end dive, rear end kicks, or the bike just feels sketchy, it's time to tweak. Here are some common signs it's time to adjust. Are you bottoming out on landings? Add compression damping, and if that doesn't work, it's time to go up in spring rate. Bike kicks sideways or bucks off jumps? Add rebound damping to your shock to slow the return. Front end feels vague in corners? Possibly reduce rebound damping or soften the compression on your forks. Packing over brake bumps or rock gardens? This means like the front end of your bike gets lower and lower and lower. Reduce the rebound damping slightly. Allow the rebound to push out faster. Bike feels harsh and chatters over small bumps? Soften up that compression on the forks, maybe even the shock. Pro tip, use technology. Record yourself riding in slow motion in these technical situations and see what's going on. If the tires are bouncing too high, tighten the compression a click. If the tires are going down so fast that they bounce on impact, tighten the rebound a bit. Slow motion is a really good way to understand what is going on with your suspension and allow yourself to make really fine-tuned adjustments to that exact spot. Also, consider making changes when you add or remove gear, like a hydration pack or more armor, heavier boots, that kind of stuff. These kind of things actually weigh a lot and they make a difference. Also, consider making changes when you switch riding terrain. Maybe you go to sand or you go to hardpack or rocks, etc. I mean, There's all different places to ride, and each one of them requires different settings. Another time that you'd want to change your suspension is if you are making drastic changes to your tire pressure. Because remember, the tire touches the ground before your suspension, therefore your tire is actually the very first component in your suspension. If you go from 20 psi to 10 psi, you're going to notice a difference. And lastly, weather changes do make a difference. Maybe one day it's nice and dry and your clickers work great. Then you get a downpour overnight and you go to the same place and everything is really sketchy. Well, the mud's going to make you slide around a little bit, but you definitely need to change your clickers to accommodate for that. Things just got softer because they got wet. If something feels off, it is off. Don't fight it, just adjust it. Your suspension is meant to work with you, not against you. Compression versus rebound damping. Compression damping controls how fast your suspension compresses on impact. Rebound damping controls how fast it extends back. Too much or too little of either, you're getting bucked, harshness, or packing. Adjust one click at a time, then test. And always take notes. How suspension affects stability. Bad compression equals dives or skips. Bad rebound kicks off bumps or packing. Like again, I talked about packing in the past, I'll reiterate. It means if you're going over whoops or braking bumps and your front end just kind of goes down, 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 down. That just means that your rebound is not rebounding quick enough and it's not able to catch up. Wrong sag ruins geometry, heavy steering, or twitchy turns. Sag is super important, and I can't stress enough because most people just ignore it, and it's crazy to me. Just because you have a new bike does not mean that it is set up for you. I do believe that a dealership should go through and do all those things for you, but the normal dealership just doesn't do it. So it's up to you as a rider to make sure your bike is set up perfectly for you. Setting your sag is step one to do that. A dialed-in suspension is just more stability, more flow, more confidence. So make sure you set yourself up for success. Advanced tuning techniques. You want to tune like a pro? Here are a couple of tips. Some bikes have O-rings like mine that'll show you how far down the fork is going. If you don't have that, easy peasy. Use a zip tie on the fork to measure that max travel. Set the zip tie, go for a lap, see where it ends up. You can use a sag gauge to set your sag, but if you don't have one, you can use a tape measure or a piece of string and mark it and then measure the tape. Without a sag gauge, setting your sag does require two people, so just bear that in mind. Track your clickers and the terrain type in a logbook or an app. This is super important because if you find yourself going to a similar place or a similar course, you can just go back in your logbook, look up what clickers you liked, put them in, and you're good to go. You don't have to think about it very much. After you've played with these, you're going to start tuning for different tracks. Sand, soften everything up. Why softer works better in sand? It absorbs small, repetitive bumps. Sand whoops and rollers create consistent chatter. A softer setup allows the suspension to stay active and absorb those hits instead of skipping over them. It improves traction. Softer compression and slightly faster rebound helps your tires dig in a little bit and stay planted in soft terrain. Grip is everything. It keeps the front end floating. A stiffer fork causes the front tire to dive and plow, which is not good. Softening the front allows it to ride higher in the sand and avoid digging in and washing out. When you're riding on sand, it's kind of like riding a jet ski. So if you have your suspension set up too stiff and you let off the gas, it digs in really hard. And if your wheels turn just a little bit, you're going to go flying in that direction. You want to be able to use this to your advantage. So having your setup just right, you can actually let off, use it to get a nice carve, and then keep going. If it's set up wrong, it's really easy to get thrown off your line or thrown off the bike. What to adjust for rocky terrain though? Forks and shock rebound, you want to go faster, so out faster. Compression, keep moderate, don't go too soft or you'll deflect off the sharper edges. Don't go too hard or it's going to feel really harsh. Springs and sag, stay in the standard range, but lean slightly softer for technical slow speed riding. Most of the time, technical hard enduro style riding is a softer setup in general. A lot of us don't have the ability to change our spring rate depending on where we're going, so we can set our sag a little bit softer and work with the clickers. Things to watch out for though, too quick of rebound can cause the bike to feel really bouncy and unstable, so always test on terrain and adjust slowly. The TLDR for the rock section is you want quicker rebound to reset your suspension between hits, stay in control, and keep your tires planted. What about hitting jumps? Do you want more compression? Yes. Why does more compression dampening help on jumps? Jumps create big forces on impact. More compression slows down how fast the suspension is able to compress, obviously. So it doesn't blow through the travel and slam into the bump stops, which is not a good thing. A stiffer suspension holds the bike better during takeoff. so it doesn't nosedive or compress unevenly, giving you more predictable launches. Improved stability on takeoff and landings. Soft suspension can bounce unpredictably off the lip of a jump or wallow on a landing. Stiffer compression keeps the bike composed and controlled through both takeoff and landing. What are we adjusting for jumps? Compression, front and rear. You want to make it a little bit stiffer. Start with 1 click, do a couple of laps, see how it feels, and I would keep going up till 3 and then adjust from there. Remember, every adjustment you make, do a lap, take notes, say, it felt better, felt worse, or it felt the same. For jumps, for rebound dampening, tune to control the kickback on landings. Don't let it rebound too fast. This is optional. Fork oil level, increasing height can add bottom out resistance without changing the springs, but I honestly don't know if I recommend this to the average rider. This is something that you need to do a little bit more research into. Your fork oil level is kind of like, think of it this way. Fork oil is non-compressible, but you have air in your forks. That air is compressible. So it's kind of like an air spring. Now, when you come down from a jump, that air is compressed and compressed and compressed and compressed, but the oil isn't. So if you have a lot of air, you have a lot of ability to compress. If you have less air, you have less ability to compress. So it is technically a tuning component. And when I did get my forks rebuilt, this was one of the secret sauces that he wouldn't even allow me, the guy who rides the bike, to know what oil level he runs. So it is a very important tuning component. So you really want to know what you're doing before you start messing with fork oil levels. And if you do, please do it very sparingly, just a little here and a little there, and take notes as always. Don't go too far with this stuff though, okay? Too much compression makes the suspension harsh and can reduce traction. You still want to absorb the hit, just with more resistance. The TLDR on adjusting for jumps. More compression gives you better support, more predictable launches, and safer landings. Soft suspension plus big air equals a bad day. Or just go to a suspension pro. They'll set your bike up for exactly your weight, terrain, type of riding that you're doing, and your ability. I would also like to add that if you have the opportunity to take your bike to a suspension pro, ask every single question and write it down. These suspension pros are the unsung heroes of the moto world. Everyone wants to give credit to the engine builder because they might make the bike go fast. But the reality is that the suspension pro is the person who either helps you feel comfortable and win races or crash out and be upset. So the suspension guy, if they're willing to answer your questions, ask them. Like I said before, my suspension guy did have some secrets, but he answered so many questions that it was incredible. If you don't have a suspension guy and you're like me and you want to do a lot of this stuff on your own, I recommend reading the Racetech Suspension Bible. It is an incredible source of information, relatively cheap to pick up, and you can reread it over and over and over again. They teach you everything you need to know, to everything from maintaining your own suspension to tuning your own suspension. So really, if you don't have access to a suspension pro, or you're just somebody who wants to do this stuff on your own, read the Racetech Suspension Bible. It's a great book. On to maintenance, maintaining your suspension. I'm going to go ahead and assume that a lot of my viewers already know this, but I think it's safe to say that some don't. So let's go ahead and go over just general maintenance for your suspension. 1, clean your fork tubes after every ride. Just take a rag and make sure that the lower or upper stanchions are clean. What I mean by a stanchion is the tube, and it's usually the shiny tube, the one that goes inside the other one. If you have inverted forks like my KTM, it's the lower one. If you have regular forks like my Beta Trials bike, it's the top one. Just make sure the shiny tube stays clean. Don't pressure wash your seals. It's okay to pressure wash your bike, but there are certain areas that are sensitive to water. The seals on your suspension are definitely one of them, and you really don't want to be just hydrojetting water into your very sensitive oil system. Use suspension safe lubes to reduce friction. I get a lot of flack for this when I put oil between my dust seal and my oil seal, but my suspension tuner does it. The reason for this is friction is the enemy in your suspension, so adding a little bit of lube is never a bad thing. But keep in mind that that lube does catch dirt. So you do need to take the seals apart, clean in between your dust and your oil seal very often, and then add lube again. Basic maintenance, but if you go a long time and ride in dust without doing this, yes, that lubrication can collect dust and turn into an abrasive paste. Keep that in mind. You definitely want to lube it up, but you definitely want to keep it clean too. This will keep your seals going for a lot longer, and who doesn't like, keeping things a little cheaper. Check for leaks, dirt rings, or plain bushings. This is actually really simple to do. When it comes to forks, you just look. Is there oil coming down on the side of your fork? If there is, you have a leak, you need to change your oil seal and your dust seal, and while you're in there, you might as well change the bushings too, and check over your suspension, clean everything out, and put new fluid in. On the rear end of things, the shock, you definitely want to just grab the shock and give it a shake. If it wiggles and makes clunking sounds, that means your bushings are worn out, and you definitely need to replace them. But you also need to remember that sometimes you need to take your shock off and add oil to those bushings. So just keep that in mind. Everything needs to be cleaned and re-lubed. That's just part of dirt bike life. Service intervals for this are pretty standard, so I'm gonna go ahead and say them. Usually I don't say service intervals because every bike is different, and check your manual. So I will say, caveat, check your manual. But my suspension guy did say this to me, and he said it's pretty standard. Fork oil, every 25 to 50 hours. For trail riding, every 15 to 30 for track. Shock is gonna be every 50 to 100 hours. If you're curious why your fork oil breaks down, it's the same as any other oil. As your forks and your shocks move, you're generating a lot of energy, and that energy is being turned into heat through friction because that oil is being moved around. So the oil is getting hotter, and the way that it keeps the same viscosity, the same thickness from when you first start riding to the time you've been riding for 2 hours is they use additives. It's simple. It's the same as engine oil. But those additives look like little tiny spiders, right? And when they're cold, they're chilly spiders, and they have their hands and their little legs in so that they can pass by each other really easily. Pretty simple, right? But as these spiders warm up, their legs come out and they start sunning. And as they pass by each other, they kind of grab each other with their legs. That's how the hotter oil remains the same viscosity. But over time, these little legs start to break off. And now you've just got a bunch of spiders without all their legs. So over time, you need to replace your oil because your little tiny spiders don't have legs anymore, and your oil viscosity is starting to change as it gets hotter. This is the same thing in your engine oil, and that's why you see the different, like 10W40 or whatever the case may be. The weights are different for different temperature ranges, and this is why we need to change it. Just a little tidbit for you. Common problems and fixes. We're going to do symptom, and then we're going to do fix next, okay? So common problems and fixes. Symptom, and then fix. Forks are harsh. You either have way too much compression or you have low oil. And the only way you're going to have low oil is if you're leaking, so that's kind of a given. Or you took oil out because you're, playing around with that. Next symptom. The rear kicks up. Rebound is too fast in the shock. Pretty simple. You're bottoming out. Too soft the spring rate, or your compression is just set really low. So obviously you want to do the cheaper thing first, set your clicker up a little bit higher to make the compression harder. And if you're still bottoming out, you might want to check what spring rate you have in your forks and your shock and maybe make an adjustment there. Twitchy steering, not enough sag. That makes sense because you have to remember the back end of the bike is being pushed up, which makes the rake a little bit further forward, so yeah. Also, twitchy steering can be adjusted by the height of your forks. So I don't know if all bikes do this, but at least with my KTM, there are 3 lines on the top of my forks. 1, 2, 3. These lines are important because if I'm going to a race that is wide open throttle for a long period of time, I want as much high speed stability as possible, right? So I'm gonna put the forks down to the very top line, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of stability. I'm also going to move the rear tire back as much as I can, and I might lower the sag 5 millimeters or so. Now, if I'm going to a race that is the opposite, very technical, it requires a lot of tight turns, maybe there's some hard enduro, I'm going to move those forks all the way up to the 3rd position. I'm going to move that rear wheel as far forward as possible, and I might consider adjusting my sag again. All of these things are tuning depending on the course and the style of riding. And I am a person that uses my bike for a lot of different types of riding. I've rally raced on my bike, I've done hard enduro on my bike, I've done hare scramble, and I've even done some motocross, all on the same motorcycle. So being able to adjust it is really important. Leaky seals doesn't necessarily mean you need to replace them. You might just have dirt in the seals, so I recommend cleaning the seal out with like a a seal doctor tool. But if the seal is worn, the seal doctor is not going to fix it. You're going to have to replace your seals. It's not so hard, and this is definitely something you can do at home if it's on the forks. If it's on the shock, sadly, you're probably going to have to take it in. That's pretty involved. Learning these symptoms and signs will help you stay ahead of the problems before they ruin your ride or race. So, final thoughts. Suspension isn't just a setup, it's a system. When it's dialed, your bike feels a lot more effortless. When it's off, you definitely feel like you're fighting for every mile. So if you want to ride smoother, faster, and with more confidence, start with your suspension. Dial it in, stay on top of maintenance, and when in doubt, maybe consider letting the pros take a look at it. And if you really want to, take it to the next level with revalving, reshimming, and getting it set up just for you. Really appreciate you watching this video. You can tell I'm a small channel and I'm doing my best. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know what your suspension setup is in the comments. Do you have anything special done? I know I have mid valves in my forks. I love them, they're great. But I have a stock shock in the rear. So I don't actually know what a fancy shock feels like. I know what fancy forks feel like, and I like them. What do you guys do? Do you use Del Saggio? Do you use the 6500 inserts for your WPs? Are you on Koyabe? Are you on KYB suspension? Are you on Showa? Are you a rich boy on Olin's? What's your suspension setup? Let me know in the comments below. I really look forward to talking to you later on. Thank you so much. Have a good one.